We're back out here once again, and today we're talking about the easiest way I know to not only catch numbers of fish, but quality fish as well, deep into fall and well into the winter. And the best part is, there's no gadgets, there's no gizmos, and there's no gimmicks. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. Got him! Ooh, that one feels pretty good. He came up and got it right by the boat. I saw him do it. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. And you know, as we get deeper into fall and into winter, and that weather just gets crisp and cold, and for a lot of you, especially up north, the snow starts falling and the ice starts forming. Well, the little things that we talked about before, such as those bass warming themselves on rock piles and wood piles and seawalls that are on the north-facing bank of your fishery, because that's where the sun is going to be for the longest part of the day, well, those begin to have less and less of an impact. Doesn't mean that the bass aren't doing it, it just means that those fish are going to become more and more sluggish. You know, they're going to get not so much harder to target, but harder to trigger because they just don't have the energy. It's like I keep telling you, you have to match the fish's energy level whenever you're fishing. You might be able to get a really quick reaction strike if you get it right next to their head, but if you want them to follow the bait, if you want them to take interest in the bait, you're going to have to adjust your tactics. And that's what today is all about. And it really boils down to one thing. And basically just one thing, and that is the retrieve that you use. My retrieves that I'm using in the fall are completely different than what I'm using in the spring and in the summer. Not only are they slowed way down, but what I'm doing in general can oftentimes be much more different. You know, the other day I'm sitting in the little boat and I caught the biggest jerkbait fish ever, right? I mean, this thing was a monster. This thing was huge. It had to be, I don't know, 25, 30 grams. This thing was an absolute behemoth. But all jokes aside, when I was undoing this little thing from the hook, the jerkbait was over the side of the boat in the water, just dangling a couple of feet below the surface. I wasn't doing anything with it. And lo and behold, boom, I got a strike from a really nice bass. I mean, it was the craziest thing. That bait was just dangling in the water, and I got a really big strike. I set the hook, but unfortunately, I ended up losing that fish. But what that told me is that those bass want it slow. They want it slow to a standstill. They want to have a good long look at it, and they want to be able to decide, do I really want to bite that or not, before they commit. And a lot of times, if you make something seem like it's a dying shad or a dying bait fish or something of that nature where it's basically twitching and then dying, you can convince a bass to eat it. But that is a particular type of retrieve, and we're going to get into that. So what we're going to do is we're going to head out on the water, and I'm going to talk about some of the retrieves that I do in the winter for various types of baits, whether we're talking about bottom bouncing baits such as Texas rigs and weightless flukes and jigs, whether we're talking about something like a hard jerk bait, or whether we're talking about a moving bait such as a lipless crank or a bladed jig. We're going to go over not only the specific spots that I'm looking for and that I'm targeting and why I'm targeting those spots. We're going to go into not just the locations that I'm picking and why I'm picking these areas and specific spots. We're going to go into the different types of retrieves for all these different types of baits and how I work them differently in the fall and in the winter. It's not just slowing it down, although that is a big part of it. There are some other things that I do differently as well. And while I may be working them slower, that doesn't mean that I'm getting fewer bites. And it also doesn't mean that I'm not getting hit so hard. Sometimes they pull the rod almost out of my hand. That almost happened today whenever I was fishing a hard jerkbait. So these retrieves really do work. Now, you're going to have the patience of Job a lot of times to work them, but I'm telling you, if you can be calm and if you can be settled, there's a little trick that I use that helps me slow down and be patient. So let's go out on the water and I'm going to show you these retrieves, the differences that I'm doing in them, and just exactly how they work for me. So let's go. All right, now when I'm targeting a spot that I want to fish, what I'm looking for is something like that. You see how it comes out and then swoops back this way into this little pocket here. This gives me a little bit of a break on the current. You can see over here toward the main channel, toward the main part of the channel where there's a submerged creek arm that goes up underneath that, that current picks up and we get kind of a current seam that runs along here. It's not as fierce as it is out there, but it's not completely slack. And we get the bass like to sit up in this type of area. It doesn't require a lot of energy for them to be here. They can dart up under the brush if they need to. You know, they can go back into the deeper water if they need to. But best of all is that current will bring them the nutrients and the food that they're looking for. So these are the types of the places that I'm targeting. Like I said, on the back side of these little peninsulas and points, you got main length points like that one over there. You know, depending on which way the wind is blowing, depending on which way the current is going, I'll set up on the down current side of it and try to find that current seam and sit on it. Now, if you're fishing from the bank, then you've already got it in, you know, you're already in a good spot because you're already sitting in that slack current side and you don't have to worry so much about getting out into that main ripping current. You've already got the bass are already in this area and you're going to have access to them. Now, the way that I'm fishing this is I'm fishing this almost like I'm fishing a wacky rig. I cast it out there, I wind it down, and then I let it sit, and 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 I let it sit. You know, like we're wacky worming in deep water, and then I give it a couple of pops on some, you know, semi-slack line, not super slack, definitely not taut. And again, we're going to let it sit, and we're going to let it sit. Pretty much like we're fishing a wacky rig in deeper water. You just have to wait for it. You have to wait for, you know, those fish to get interest in your bait. And you can give it a couple extra pops every once in a while. You know, you can kind of work it just a little bit and then kind of let it sit. But make sure you put long pauses in there, 5, 10, 15 seconds or longer. That's going to be the key because a lot of times those bass are just feeling slow and lethargic and they don't want anything, you know, moving fast. They want it nice and easy. They want it brought to them where they don't have to do any work. They just have to open their mouth and eat it. Got him. Ooh, that one feels pretty good. He came up and got it right by the boat. I saw him do it. Foul hooked him, but he's not a bad fish. Ooh, he's still got some play left in him. Come here, you. He was sitting there right by the bottom of the boat and he came up and got it. That dude is north of 2 pounds right there. That's a gorgeous bass. And I just let it sit there. I let it sit there right up under the boat. And I watched him come up and get it. He followed it in and I saw him. I didn't have him too bad. Beautiful fish. Absolutely beautiful fish. That is a YouTube 7-pounder right there. Right at 2 pounds. Gorgeous, beautiful fish. Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you very much. There he goes. I've got this Zoom fluke tied onto a flipping hook with a 1/16 ounce weight that is going freely. And the way I'm fishing this today is I'm casting it out there and letting it soak. I'm pretending like I have a backlash. You know, like I gotta pick out that backlash, gotta pick out that backlash, gotta pick out the backlash. You know, how many times have we all been fishing and we cast and we get a backlash, and when we're done picking the backlash out, well, there's a fish on the end. Well, right now, especially this time of year, you have to do it like that. Give it a couple of pops and leave it sit, let it soak, leave it sit, let it soak. Couple of pops, leave it sit, let it soak. Achingly slow. You know, that's the hardest part of the entire ordeal, the entire ritual, is, you know, letting it go slow enough. And you cannot be too slow. You can be too fast, but you can't be too slow. So whenever you're working these baits, make sure that you're working them good and slow. I'm giving it a, you know, good pop, and then I'm waiting 5, 10, you know, sometimes 15 seconds before I move that bait again. And I'm finding that's where all my bites are coming from, especially today. Slowing that bait down, slowing that presentation way down. You know, that's why a lot of guys aren't getting bites whenever we move into late fall and into the winters, because you're just working it too fast. You know, it doesn't matter what type of bait it is. Slow things down and see just exactly how many more fish you catch when you do that. I got him. Foul. Oh, I got him. I got him. Oh, well, I got him good too. Oop, 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 oop. You aren't going anywhere. Little bitty bass on a little goofy fluke thing that I did. Boy, he's long and skinny. Long and skinny. He's got a bloody tail too. Are you spawning? Huh. Alright, little dude. Well, thank you very much. If there's you, then there's more. If there's you, there's more. I appreciate it, dude. Now, even with something like this, a bladed jig, a vibrating jig, you know, that's a half-ounce thunder cricket. I'm casting it out there, and I'm not letting it sit on the bottom, but I am just slow rolling it. I want to stay just above the tops of that vegetation, and that's how I'm working it. Is if I can feel that, you know, the bait kicking the tops of that vegetation, that's right where I want that to be. I'm not burning it. I'm going very, very slowly. Again, just kind of like that. And this is a 7:1 gear ratio, so that bait is just kind of creeping along just enough to stay above the tops of the vegetation. That's kind of what I want. I want it to tick the tops of the vegetation, but stay down in the water just a little bit. And you know, even something like a lipless crankbait or a square bill, you know, a flat-sided silent crankbait like a, you know, a balsa bait or a fritz side, you just really have to slow them way down. I go just fast enough where I can keep that blade thumping and keep that bait above that vegetation. But I'm not burning it by any means. I'm just keeping it nice and slow. I'm slow rolling it. And that's where I'm getting my bites from. That's where I'm getting all my bites. So as you can see, you've got to work all your baits, all your different types of presentations. You've got to slow them down, you know. You've got to match the mood of those bass, like I've been saying. Doesn't matter whether you're fishing a jerkbait, doesn't matter whether you're fishing a crankbait, a bladed jig, a Texas rigged worm, you know, it doesn't matter. You've got to match the mood and energy level of those fish. Otherwise, you're not going to be getting all the bites that you can be getting. You're going to end up missing fish and missing bites, and, you know, nobody wants to go home with a big old skunk still in the boat. So there you have it. If you have the patience to alter your retrieves and slow down to a grinding stop in a lot of cases. You know, like I said, you got to treat a hard jerkbait pretty much like a wacky rig out in deep water and just pretend that it's falling way, way, way down. Or whenever you're using a bottom technique like a jig or a Texas rig or something like that, whenever you cast it out there, pretend that you threw a backlash and you have to wait before you can start working that bait until that backlash is picked out. I'm telling you what, it is a phenomenal way to keep yourself from working those baits too fast or too early. It's what works for me. You know, give it a try. I'm telling you, these retrieves produce some really nice bass in the winter, and I know you'll have success and you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.